Great. So, well, thank you all for taking the time for this presentation on website research. It's called Hidden in Plain Sight. And we're going to be using commented code and web metadata for website research. Now, this presentation is a combination of me showing you some slides and showing you my browser screen where I actually do the stuff that I'm going to show you, because OSINT is a very practical thing, right? Sometimes it's much better to do things. It's much obvious when you do them directly than when you show them in pictures. Now, that being said, I'm going to switch to my browser screen here, because I want to start with an overview of what we're going to cover today so that you get a sense of how we're going to spend our next 30 minutes or so. Now, this is the SANS website, right? And as you know, behind this interface that you see, there's code. There's code that you can get at either by using the inspect element here, and you can see the code and how it renders visually, or you can go straight to the code with the view page source option, and this is the code, right? Now, what we're going to do in the next 30 minutes or so is we're going to look at things that are in this source code, but they don't render visually. So you don't see them on the user interface. Because I've discovered in my investigations, and I'm going to give a lot of examples about that there's stuff here that's genuinely helpful, but you don't get it unless you look at this code. You don't get it from the interface. Now, that being said, I'm ready to move on to the presentation. Go to the presenter mode. We've just been through the summary, and I'll start with the mandatory self-introduction. I'll only talk about stuff that's relevant. And one of the things that's relevant is that I work on due diligence and corporate investigations cases. So I spend a lot of time looking at company websites. This is good to know because my use case and my examples might not be your use case and your example. So you might have to adapt what I'm saying because your threat model is different and your area is different. In terms of jurisdictions, I focus a lot on Asia, particularly Chinese speaking. I worked there for a number of years. I speak the language. And then also the European Union, and particularly my home country of Romania. Again, you might have to adapt my examples and what I'm saying to your specific jurisdictions. In terms of experience, I spent 4 years at an investigations firm in Hong Kong and the past 3 years running my own IT and due diligence firm. All right, so now that we got this out of the way, we can go to the definition of the hidden data. So I call hidden data the data that I just told you about, which is data that's visible in the code, but it's not visible in the interface of the website. Basically, this is a collection of commented code, metadata, and file-based clues, but I call them hidden data because it sounds more mysterious. It sounds more interesting, right? When you do OSINT, you don't tell your friends that you look for file-based clues. You tell them you look for hidden data. That sounds a bit better, but you know what I'm talking about when I say this. The next slide, here's the types of data that we're going to discuss, the types of so-called hidden data: HTML comments, file names, root files, meta tags, HTML attributes, JavaScript comments, and JSON LD. This will become much more obvious what I mean when I go through specific examples. So we don't have to read the definitions of this because it will become obvious as I present. And we'll start with the first item, the HTML comments. This is where I found a lot of good stuff in my investigations, and I'll show you some good examples of that. So if you ever wrote code, you know what commented code is. But I'll repeat it here. It's code that's ignored during execution. So I'm giving you an example here. A lot of times developers use this to leave notes, right? The green text on the screen, this section adds a navigation menu. It just tells what the code below does, right? It's not part of the code per se. And sometimes people use it as a way to soft delete things. So you don't want to delete, in this case, the beta feature under testing thing. You just comment it so that basically you can uncomment it later on and use it. And we'll see that when developers do this, it's usually not good because we can see those things and they might reveal important things. And I'll just start with some examples from my investigations where this kind of commented code that's available in the source code of a website was really, really helpful for me. The first example that I have on my screen here, you see the code snippet. This is from a company that had offices all around Asia, in Malaysia, Mexico, Mongolia. So you see the names of the countries there. And then you see the green text, which is commented code. This was a Myanmar office. For some reasons that I won't get into, this office became controversial in 2021. And they didn't hide, well, the fact that they have they hid the fact that they had an office from the website, but they kept it in the source code. And the link that this led to still worked. So you could still access the link, it was invisible from the website. But that led me to, look even deeper and do all sorts of OSINT that we do with satellite imagery and all the good stuff, just because they've basically, drawn more attention to the fact that they had this office instead of hiding it, which was the intention. Another example, this is another snippet of code. This is all commented code. It's all green. And you see here names of employees. There's Smith, there's Stojanovic, there's Rogers, Helena, and you also have their titles, photos. This is a company that basically, when its employees left, it just kept their names and bios in the commented code. So this wasn't visible on the actual website, but you go to to the source code and you see the names of these people, their titles, you get stuff about even their image. The file was still working. So if you access to that website directly, which we will do shortly, you'll see how I was able to get that. Again, that was not supposed to be visible. They were not supposed to leave a kind of a trail of like whoever worked there and in what capacity in the source code of their website. Another example, similar. In this case, it's a company that was sanctioned. And one of the things they did once they got sanctioned is they hid the names of their key principals on their website. This is not past employees, it's actual employees, their positions, and a lot of information there. They thought, maybe, hiding them from the website would provide some protection, but they didn't delete it. They commented the code, which again was visible. This is another company that was sanctioned. It had a line producing stuff that was related to surveillance, as you can see here, to public surveillance. Again, they commented the line of product out of their company website source code. Again, instead of deleting it, they commented it. It was still there and you can see it. This is another example of a firm that had information about who owns the company, who controls it, who it works with. That again, after some scandal in the media, they decided to hide that from their website, but did it the wrong way. And I also have a couple of examples about contact details hidden in source code, which I thought were also interesting. Here, there's an email address, a contact email address, which again, they were getting probably too many complaints, too many contacts. They just decided to take that away from the public interface of the website, from the interface, but not from the source code. Same thing happened here. It's just a phone number. It was a company with faulty products. Generally speaking, when you do due diligence and a company is hiding contact details from their website, is not a good thing, right? Then you keep digging and you find out why it's not a good thing. This example also relates to contact details, but it was from a government portal that had their send feedback link. They wanted no more feedback, or it might have been some other reasons. This is, obviously, it could have been all sorts of reasons why they did that, but they just commented it out. This one was a bit more interesting even, because this is a company that had a database that you could access. And they had links to that database. You can see there's the register link, the login link, the about us link, all with green text or commented code. And below is what they've put in its place, which is, you can see there the pound symbol or the hashtag symbol for the younger folks here. That is a placeholder, right? As you know, in HTML. So that means you click on the register link, nothing happens now. Well, while before there used to be an actual registration link. So you go to the source code and you can see that the actual registration link was still working. So if you accessed it directly, you could still create accounts, you could still get guest access. So I guess, again, they wanted to block access to their database, but they didn't, because they didn't disable the login, they didn't disable the access, they just hid it from the code and not in a very good way with placeholders there. The next two examples refer to more contact details on the website. So this is a link to an active Twitter account for the creator of the site. And then they didn't want their Twitter associated with the company anymore, their name associated with the company anymore. They copied it out, but not deleting it. And this one relates to something I come across quite a lot, which is cloned or copied websites. So someone steals someone else's website, sometimes to sell products, sometimes to attract traffic for all sorts of reasons. And in this case, there's a YouTube link here because they copied the website and then they changed images and videos and everything from the website. But in this case, they left this YouTube link, which was from the original company where they cloned the website, and they kept it in the source code. So visiting this, it just told me right away that this website is a clone, and it told me who they tried to clone, even if they changed some stuff. And there's two more examples here about companies that are state-owned, and they had sections on their websites about political activities they did as part of their state ownership responsibilities. Again, there was a media storm about some of their connections. They commented all of that code out, and that was, again, very helpful for a case I was working on. And lastly, for this batch of examples, it's a funny one. This didn't help me too much in my investigation, but it's a quote from Pulp Fiction, the movie. Someone put them in the source code. I think it's as a placeholder. I'm not going to read it because it has some bad words. The point is, I found a lot of weird things. There's many things like this that I found, like all sorts of quotes and stuff that shouldn't be there. But this obviously wasn't that helpful for investigations like the previous examples were. So I gave you a lot of examples about this because this was basically the code comments were where I found the most information from all of this stuff that I'm looking at in the source code. The next one is in file names. And these were not as helpful as the code comments, but they were still useful. And here's how this works. So when you upload a photo to your website, you want to upload, let's say, this photo of some data, but you upload it from your desktop, and then the name of that file from your desktop might be visible in the source code. So if you put something like fake data for public view.png, again, the data looks good on the interface, but if you go to the source code, it doesn't look good. And this is where I'm getting some of my clues also, and I'll show you some examples. This doesn't work for most social media platforms. These days, most of them and sites with content management systems rename the file, so make sure stuff like this doesn't happen. But for a good number of websites, it still works. And I'll show you some examples of stuff that I found, and I could extract that extra tiny little bit of info that was helpful for my investigation. This is from an actual website, file name. You can already guess, some things about that file. It was a compressed file sent over WhatsApp based on the name, kind of, and it gives you the date, it gives you the hour. If they had claimed the photo was taken earlier or later, you might have this as some sort of indication that they might have lied if they did, or that they haven't if they haven't. In another case, there was like a property management firm. They had photos of some of the properties they had on their website, but I was looking for the exact legal entity that was managing a specific property, still in a due diligence case, and in the source code, like in the name for the file of that property, they had this exclusively managed by, and they were telling me the company name, which led me to the actual company that was managing the property. That again was not very obvious what the legal name of the managing entity was, and this was helpful because they put it in the title there. Lastly, and again, this happens a lot, is a company that claims to be legitimate, has photos of their team working at their desks or like a team retreat or some products. And then you go in the source code and you see something like this, Shutterstock, right? Which is one of those websites where you can download stock images. So based on this, you know, that's not an original photo of their team. That's not the original photo of their products. It's just a downloaded thing. And yeah, this completes basically the second type of data that, again, helped me a lot, which is images. And I want to move on now from this presentation and just get a bit more practical, because as you would have guessed by now, the source code, there can be a lot, like the source code for all of these websites that you're visiting. Like when I'm doing my research, I can visit tens or hundreds of websites, and going through that source code manually might be difficult. So I'm going to show you a solution I had for this problem, which was, and I'm going to use my own company website because I've put some stuff in the code that's instructive for this. I've built a browser extension, and this was created with the help of Ricardo from Ricta Technologies, who gave me a hand with this product. It's just a browser extension that does this for you. So instead of going through the source code, as I've showed, like click, inspect, and browse and see the name of the image all here, obviously it's easier at scale to just click on an extension like this and see if there's anything of value there. And maybe you want to dig deeper, but a lot of times you won't find anything really relevant and you want to move on without spending too much time. Now, this extension has 6 buttons here, so it's very easy to use. It's on Chrome Web Store already. This is the HTML comments button, which I've already shown. And for my website, this is an interesting thing. My website builder, Webflow, injects this in my website's code. So it tells everyone the last time I modified my website. In this case, it tells you that I did change it this morning to show you some stuff. Again, that's very useful information in some cases. So if websites are made with Webflow, you can get that stuff about them in the code comments. Here, I have stuff about the images, right? The images that we've just discussed, the image titles. And if you look through this web page, I have like 3 images, and you see some of their titles: due diligence, Valerian, Uglea. Now this might relate, well, you can check, and it is related to this photo. Valerian is probably someone's middle name, not my middle name. I just made it up and put it here this morning because I thought it'd be instructive in the sense that you can get stuff like this from websites. But the first time I ran this extension on my own website that I built, I was surprised to see that I saw here some file names, question, due dil, that were not on this page, because this page has like 3 photos and maybe some icons here. And well, I went to investigate because I said, well, something looks off. Like where in the source code did I put these files? And I went back here where the extension brings the exact image tag. And I'm looking for the image that has question in its title, because that's the image I wanted to investigate, because it doesn't look like it's in the page there. And I'm just going to open it separately. And I did find an image that's not in the source code here, right? I mean, that's not on the, that's not displayed here. So I continued my investigation. Again, at first I was surprised even if it's my website, because I had no idea how that ended up there. So I went with inspect, which is a traditional manual way. And I went to see where that image that had some question in it was. And I found it here, but it's not displayed in the page. And if you've ever built a website, you know that probably the reason is it has its display set to none. So now I'm going to look through the source code. And again, it helps if you know a bit of how websites work. And I'm just going to click through these divs and look at the styles and see which of them has had its display set to none. And I find this one that has this display set to none here. And if I unclick it, again, this is, everyone can do this. This is just a, a public thing you can do with all websites. You can see that a whole web section of my website showed up here. And then I remembered that around 2 years ago, I built this section of case studies. And then I was like, well, I don't really like this here. And I thought I deleted it, but as it happened, I haven't. It's because I keep criticizing people who don't delete stuff and put it in comments in their code. Well, exactly the same thing happened to me, and I had no idea this was here. I had no idea I'd set that display to none instead of actually hiding it a while ago. So that was also very instructive. But moving on from images, you see that there's 4 more buttons left in the extension here, and I'm going to go through them briefly because there's more data that you can get. I don't have as many examples for these ones, so we're going to go a bit quicker, but I think they're important. This root files section brings some files that are used by websites to show stuff about website structure or interact with search engines. You guys would be familiar with the robots.txt file, so I won't explain too much about it. It's just a file that websites put at the root level. That means here after the domain name. So if I type in robots.txt, you'll see exactly the file that I grabbed here. You can do it manually. It's just telling the website, the engines how to interact with this web page. For example, it's telling Google and others not to index these pages, and other robots, well-behaved robots, because this is not legally binding. They don't have to abide by it, but well-behaved robots do, and some of them don't, to not index these pages. These are real pages on my website. I don't want them indexed, not because they're sensitive. You shouldn't put sensitive stuff here, but just because, for example, this is a credit section for images. This becomes relevant if you're trying to sue me for copyright infringement. Like, there's always some information there that might be helpful for OSINT, even if it's not sensitive, even if it's not a mistake that they put it there. There's other files that I'm gonna talk about briefly. Other than the robots.txt, there's other root files, and I'll talk about them when I get back to the presentation. The meta tags. The meta tags are, again, in the source code. They don't show up in the interface, and they're websites' way of, again, communicating with search engines. So you can see the description here. That's the description that will appear on the search engine if you search for my company's name there. And you get some interesting stuff here, like this is an image that I put so that when you share my links on social media, you get them. A lot of websites have that, right? So if you share that on social media, again, might be relevant. There's a lot of stuff here, the Twitter account. Mostly they're helpful if the company has revamped itself. It was making toys, and then pandemic hit, and it was making masks, and it changed its website really quickly, but it forgot about the meta tags, or someone copied the website, and again, it forgot about meta tags, or they're not right. And these are cases where in your due diligence research, this can be really helpful. The sitemap as well, it's just a list of links on this website. Now, not all websites have the sitemap. You don't have to have. A lot of websites do have it because it's good for search engine indexation. But what tends to happen is, especially if you're updating it manually, you have a web page, you delete it because you don't want it on your website anymore or something, but it's still left here in the sitemap. Even for myself, I think I found some stuff and I had to delete it here because it was pages I deleted, forgot about them here, and that was, that was some information that someone could have used. And lastly, I'm going to talk about the JavaScript comments. JavaScript is basically that, that code that makes stuff move on the websites, that animates clicks, and just basically that the moving parts of your websites are made with JavaScript. And here I get JavaScript comments, which are a bit like HTML comments, just that they tend to be a bit more technical. Just for the sake of, showing this to you, I've put something, because I didn't have JavaScript comments for this site, but I put something. It's a poem about OSINT. It goes like this. If you're reading this, congratulations. There's nothing here, but it could have been. The story of my life as an OSINT researcher. I don't find much, but I dream about what I could have found. Now, I put this here like as an Easter egg if someone is looking at my source code, but also to show you that if I want to confirm that it is indeed there, I can go to the view page source as I did, and you can see the poem that I put here that I grabbed automatically with the tool, but it was here. Now my website is, the code is minified, so it's all on one row with like no spaces, so it's harder to see. But for this poem, I put it in kind of in clear text because I just want it to be an Easter egg. All right, so I'm going to go back to my presentation and add a bit more context and some examples to the stuff that I've just shown you, because I thought again it'd be relevant to just go and show you practically how it's done. As I said, the extension is available on Chrome, but I mean, your OSINT people, you are aware that using extensions makes you a bit more unique in terms of browser fingerprinting. You're aware that extensions can go rogue, that they're updated automatically. You know that that happens with all extensions. You know whether you should be using your extension, this extension that I made, or any other extension, or you want to do it manually. So I had to mention that, but I'm sure you're aware that that's how things work. So root files, as I said, we've discussed briefly about robots.txt. I haven't touched on others because they're not that common, because you're not required to have these root files. But ads.txt and app ads were helpful for me in the past because it's where a company, like a website, lists who is allowed to sell ads for them. And then there's some files like humans.txt, security, privacy, sitemap, or the well-known directory. Again, it's useful when you find stuff like this. Most websites don't have it. I encourage you to do your own research and find out more about these files. I'm going to just show you some examples here. This is an example of a robots.txt that I found that used to have something sensitive there, file with passwords. Again, that's not, it's not indexed by engines, but exists. So it's not a good way. The vulnerability is not there anymore. They fixed it, but it's something that should not have been there from the beginning. GitHub security txt file. A lot of the stuff that I do with source code results in me finding companies posting recruitment announcements, which I think it's funny. So sometimes they're like, oh, if you found this, you should apply for a job here. I think, you see for GitHub, there's a hiring link there too. This is an example of an ads.txt file. This was relevant because I was looking at a firm. It wasn't clear who owned it, but they disclosed who owned their ads inventory, which was the same entity that owned the company. So that was helpful. But again, these cases are quite rare. This is a human.txt file example. Again, these are very rare because especially if you're investigating someone that wants to hide themselves, they're not going to put the humans.txt file there. The meta tags that I just touched on, the search engine description and keywords, they're all here. You can research them if you find them interesting, depending on what you're looking for in a website. Again, the author or title or whatever might be relevant for you. Again, websites don't have to have these. It's just good practice for search engine optimization, and a lot of them have it. And again, and sometimes they go wrong with these, and you get stuff that's helpful for your investigations. This is an example that I've shown here, but it's pretty much similar to what I've shown for my own website. Again, a lot of times it saves time for me. Sometimes they disclose the exact name of the entity owning it and the company, like the corporate entity, and that saves time. Sometimes, again, they clone the website and they forget about this, and it's really helpful. JavaScript comments, which I touched on. Remember the poem that I put there? For me, these are mostly helpful because they're technical, like you get stuff about the developers. And in the snippet that I've shown you, you can see the developers using different languages. Here again, another word of caution. If you see something like Russian in the source code, don't jump to conclusions that's a Russian state-sponsored operation. We've seen that happen in the past. You have to know, maybe they copied that code library from somewhere. So you have to analyze what's happening there. Don't just find something in the source code and claim I found this in the source code, so it has to be true. Make sure you know what you're doing. But again, your OSINT professionals applies to everything you do. Don't find something and then make it a big thing when it might not be. So just understand what that means. That's very, very important. This is the JSON object notation for linked data, the JSON LD data. This is, and again, like the meta tags kind of, Some websites put this in the way they communicate with search engines. They communicate with Google in this way. There's some helpful stuff here sometimes, because the knowledge panel that you see on Google sometimes when you access a website, that knowledge panel to the right-hand side is built from this. For me, it ended up a lot of times just saving me some time, because they gave me the legal name of the firm and some other info, which I would have taken some time to get to. I haven't found anything sensitive here. But again, if a company is cloning websites, or forget if like not knowing what they do, you might get lucky with stuff like this as well. So yeah, we're getting very close to the end of my presentation here. There's obviously much more than what I've shown you in the source code of the website. I've tried to give you some pointer and some more information that you can research by yourselves here with this presentation in the intro, and in with the tables that I've given you that I haven't explained all of the types of the data. The extension that I built, it's there. You can have a look at it. I'll probably put it on GitHub, so it gives you more comfort. They can, some people can look at the source code and see that it's nothing malicious happening there. And I also look forward to you, like if you find something that I'm not getting, or like if you go down this route of looking at website source code and file-based clues and all that, and if you find good stuff, let me know, and maybe I'll update the extension, or just so that everybody is aware about it. I think it's an underused resource. It worked in my investigations because I work a lot on like Asia, and a lot of the countries have websites that use older technologies. They're updated manually, because if it's a really modern website, a lot of stuff is generated automatically. They delete the comments, they're careful with the files. But for companies that I did due diligence on, particularly, with older stuff, the extension, by the way, works on Wayback Machine links as well. So you can go back in the past, even if they have a modern website now, maybe in the past they had an old one that had stuff, so you can analyze the code of that. So that's helpful too. So basically that's it for me. I encourage you to, tell me what you find with this. Again, I'm sure there's more stuff there that I'm not getting that's helpful for OSINT, and if we discover it together, maybe we can all take advantage of it. I leave you with this joke about some developer that was raging against his colleagues who kept changing his code. So put that in the comments for the world to see. So thank you. If there's any time, I can take some questions. If not, you can find me on LinkedIn, I prefer, or on Twitter.